My door wouldn't open. The new lock was bright and shiny, like a stranger's teeth. Through the side light, I saw someone's high heels in the shoe rack, right where my late husband's space was always kept empty. A note was taped to the wood. "Mom, please rest. Let us handle things." I pulled out my phone and called my locksmith and my lawyer. The next morning, the front lawn was full of suitcases that did not belong to me. My name is Margaret Doyle, but most people just call me Maggie. I am 62 years old, and for the last 8, I've been a widow. I live in Redwater, Illinois, in the 2-story clapboard house that Patrick and I bought back when the paint was peeling and the floors sagged. We spent the better part of the 90s fixing it, our weekends lost to drywall dust and stain fumes. Every plank in the floor, every tile in the kitchen, holds some memory of his hands. My relationship with my son, Evan, is not what it used to be. It has its good days and its bad years. Things changed when he married Sabrina Kerr, who is now Sabrina Doyle. Sabrina is ambitious in a way that feels polished for public viewing. She manages her image, and Evan's, like a full-time job, for 30 years. I was a shift manager at Maple and Hallow Social Services. It was a job that ran on documentation. If it wasn't written down, dated, and filed in triplicate, it didn't happen. That kind of precision stays with you. It's why I paid off the mortgage 12 years ago, why the original deed and all our important papers are stored in a small wall safe behind a painting of the Illinois River. It's why, on the 1st of every month, I reconcile my accounts and check my inventory, from the canned goods in the pantry to the insurance premiums. Patrick used to say I was the most organized woman in Redwater. I just call it being prepared. That preparedness is why I felt the shift before I could name it. It started about 3 months ago. Evan and Sabrina, who usually limited their visits to obligatory holidays, started appearing every week. First, it was just Evan, stopping by with a bag of organic apples, claiming he was in the neighborhood. Then Sabrina started coming, too, bringing elaborate, pre-made dinners in expensive glass containers that she always left behind. They cooed about how much they missed me, how they worried about me being alone in this big house. The sudden attention felt like a coat that didn't fit right. One evening, while I was rinsing dishes, Sabrina came up beside me. She wasn't helping. She was just standing there, filling the space. The smell of her perfume, something heavy and floral and expensive, cut right through the clean, sharp scent of the lemon oil I use on the wood cabinets. It was an invasion of the air itself. "Maggie," she said, calling me by my first name as she always did. "We were just thinking, with Evan helping you more, we should really look into optimizing your tax situation." I kept scrubbing the plate. "My taxes are fine. Sabrina." "Of course," she said, her voice smooth. "But it's also about planning, just in case of an emergency. A power of attorney, for example. Just so Evan can handle things if you ever, can't." I turned the water off. The dripping faucet was the only sound. "I can handle things." "We know." "Mum," Evan added quickly from the living room, his voice too loud, too cheerful. "It's just paperwork, for peace of mind." I looked past them, toward the fireplace. Patrick's photograph sat on the mantel, taken the year we finished the staircase. He was smiling, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He looked solid, dependable. He felt like a silent witness to all of this. I didn't answer them. I just dried my hands and folded the towel, placing it perfectly on the handle of the oven. I was thinking about the house, about the decades Patrick and I had poured into it, making it ours. A strange, cold thought settled in my mind, a question I'd never had before. What if one day your own house doesn't recognize you? Evan took to his role as the dutiful son with a sudden, rehearsed fervour. He started stopping by on his own, always on Tuesday afternoons, always with a bag of expensive groceries. "Hey, Mum," he'd say, placing the organic kale or the $5 artisan bread on my counter. "Just wanted to make sure you were stocked up." He'd linger, looking at the stack of mail on the desk. "You seem to have a lot of bills there. It must be overwhelming. Why don't I help you get those set up on autopay? We could link it to my account, just to make sure nothing ever gets missed." "My ledger works perfectly fine. Evan," I told him, keeping my voice light. "I've been paying my own bills for over 40 years. I think I have the hang of it." He would flush, just a little. He was never good at concealing his frustration. This was Sabrina's script, but he was a poor actor. The real performance came at dinner. Sabrina orchestrated these meals, bringing over complex dishes that left my kitchen smelling of spices I didn't own. They were awkward affairs. The three of us sitting at the heavy oak table Patrick and I used to refinish. During one of these dinners, Sabrina put down her wine glass and fixed me with her bright, assessing stare. "Maggie, we've been thinking," she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. "This house is just so much for one person. All the upkeep, the stairs." I looked at the stairs. I'd climbed them 4 times that day. "The stairs are fine." "Of course," she placated, waving a hand. "But you deserve to be relaxing. We found the most wonderful new serviced apartment over by the city, the Pinnacle. It has a pool, meal service, round-the-clock security. You wouldn't have to lift a finger. You could just rest, and we would take care of the house for you. Rent it out. Maybe. Get you some income." The words hung in the air. Serviced apartment. Take care of the house. Rent it out. I catalogued the phrases. I kept my face smooth. "This is my home. Sabrina. I am not interested in moving. We're just planning for the future. Maggie," she said, her smile tightening. Then, without missing a beat, she pulled out her phone. "Oh, that reminds me." She dialed a number. "Hello, is this Prestige Window Treatments?" "Yes. I'd like to schedule a consultation for 324 Elm Street." My address. I felt the blood drain from my face. Evan looked down at his plate, suddenly fascinated by his fork. "Yes, for the entire ground floor and the master suite." Sabrina continued into the phone. "We're looking at a complete modernization. Sometime next week." She was booking a curtain measurement in my house. While I was sitting right here, she clicked off the phone and looked at me, beaming. "Just getting some quotes for the future, you know." The evening soured after that. Evan, trying to steer the conversation back to their objective, attempted a clumsy segue. "Mum, speaking of, you know, housekeeping stuff. Where do you keep the house deed and the insurance papers? Sabrina was saying we should have copies, just for our records, in case of a fire or something." I paused, my hand on my water glass. I looked past him, to the iron railing that separated the dining room from the sunken den. "Patrick welded that," I said, my voice steady. "He taught himself, spent a whole weekend in the garage, sparks flying, until the joints were perfect." He always said the strength is in the join. I met Evan's gaze. Everything important is exactly where it needs to be. Evan? His eyes dropped first. As they were leaving, Sabrina stopped by the door, pulling her coat on. You know, Maggie, the simplest thing would be to just consolidate your mail. We have a P.O. box for the business. We could just file a forward, have everything sent there. It would make paying your property taxes so much simpler for us. I am capable of paying my own taxes. Sabrina, I said. I've never missed a deadline. Of course. Just an idea. For convenience. After they left, the silence in the house felt different. It felt threatened. I went to take out the recycling, bundling the Sunday papers. In the bottom of the blue bin, tucked under a pizza flyer, was a folded piece of paper. It was a blank United States Postal Service change of address form, one of the ones you pick up at the post office counter. They had brought it with them, ready to be filled out. A cold dread, sharp and acidic, rose in my throat. I went to my tablet and opened the app for the Ring doorbell camera. I rewound the footage. There. Last week. Evan had come inside. Sabrina had stayed on the porch, waiting. The camera recorded her clearly. She looked up and down the street, then pulled out her own keychain. She carefully selected the spare key to my house, the one I had given Evan for emergencies only. She held it up, steadying her hand, and used her phone to take 2, maybe 3, clear photographs of the key, capturing the cut of the teeth. My breath caught. I sat there for a long time, the house silent around me. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't call Evan. I didn't call Sabrina. I opened my contacts and found the number for my locksmith. Frank, I typed. It's Maggie Doyle. I'd like to schedule a full security review of my home. Maybe next week. I think it's time for an upgrade. The mail came on Thursday. My locksmith, Frank, was scheduled for the following Monday. But they had already moved. Tucked between a hardware store flyer and my utility bill was a thin manila envelope from the Redwater County Assessor's Office. Official business. I opened it standing right there at the kitchen counter, the linoleum cool under my feet. It was not a bill. It was a confirmation of official change of mailing address. It stated that, per a request filed on October 23rd, all future correspondence, tax notices, and assessments regarding the property at 324 Elm Street would be redirected. Not to me, not to my post office box, to an address on the north side of town I had never seen before. My blood ran cold. I had not filed this. I immediately sent a text message to Evan. My fingers were stiff. I received a notice from the county. Why did they change my mailing address? A reply came back almost instantly, too instantly. Oh, that. The tax office required it for the new senior exemptions. Just paperwork. Sabrina is handling it. The language was sterile, boilerplate. It was not how my son typed. It was how Sabrina spoke. A second later, a notification from Sabrina herself lit up my phone. It was not a text, but an email. The subject line was helpful info. Inside was a link to a generic website, 7 ways to protect your elderly parents from financial scams. Below the link, she had written a single, patronizing sentence, just some light reading for you. The smiley face felt like a slap. The rage that hit me was hot, sudden, and clarifying. I did not reply. Instead, I walked into the living room and moved the painting of the Illinois River. I spun the dial on the wall, safe 3 numbers Patrick and I had chosen. The date of our first major snowstorm together. The heavy steel door clicked open. I pulled out the accordion file marked House. The original deed, heavy and embossed, was there. The title insurance policy. There. Patrick's will. There. But something was missing. I kept certified copies of the deed, just in case. I always kept 3. Now there were only 2. 1 certified copy was gone. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from focus. I locked the safe, my movements precise. I went back to the kitchen and picked up the phone. I called the county recorder of deeds. The hold music was a terrible, synthesized version of a song from the 80s. When a clerk finally answered, I kept my voice perfectly level. Hello? My name is Margaret Doyle. I am calling to inquire about my property at 324 Elm Street. I am checking on the status of any recent filings or recordings. I heard the click-clack of a keyboard. Yes, Mrs. Doyle. I see a filing here from, let's see, October 23rd. It looks like a... The clerk paused, and I heard paper rustling. A quitclaim deed. It is currently in the queue, pending verification. The room tilted. A quitclaim deed. A transfer of ownership. The fastest way to move a title. Who filed it? I asked, my voice flat. The submission was electronic, ma'am, but the hard copy was provided. It appears to be signed by you, Margaret Doyle, as grantor, and Evan Doyle, as grantee, pending verification. That meant it wasn't final. Not yet. I hung up the phone. I sat down at the oak table. I breathed. In, out. I was a manager at Maple and Hallow. I knew procedure. I knew paperwork. And I knew this was fraud. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Mrs. Keating, my neighbour from across the street. She is 82, sharp as a tack, and misses nothing. Maggie, dear, she said, her voice crackling. I don't mean to be a busybody. I'm sure it's nothing. What is it? Helen. Well, I saw the strangest thing on Tuesday, around 10 in the morning. I flipped open my own calendar on the wall. Tuesday, 10 a.m. My handwriting, Redwater Cardio, Dr. Patel, annual checkup. I was there. I remembered the nurse struggling to find a vein. What did you see? Helen. Well, your son's wife, Sabrina. She let herself in your front door, but she wasn't alone. She was with another woman. Very professional looking. Dark blazer, carrying one of those important-looking briefcases. They were inside for maybe 15 minutes. No more. Then they came out, shook hands right on your porch, and the woman in the blazer drove off. A woman in a blazer, a briefcase, 15 minutes. Sabrina had brought someone into my home while I was at a doctor's appointment to sign a document as me. She had used the key she photographed. The pieces clicked together with the cold, hard sound of a lock engaging, the missing certified copy, the strange woman, the quitclaim deed, signed with my name, while I was across town having my blood pressure taken. I grabbed a yellow legal pad from the desk. My handwriting was sharp, angry, but clear. I started a list. Number 1 notary. The woman in the blazer. She had to be one. Number 2 county recorder. Stop that verification. Number 3 bank. Lock accounts. Number 4 insurance. Confirm policies. Number 5 Arthur Levin. My lawyer. I looked at the list. This was the plan. This was the procedure. I ripped the sheet from the pad and folded it, placing it next to my keys. I took a deep breath. Do not get angry. Maggie. I whispered to the empty room. Get procedural. Arthur Levin's office was on the third floor of a brick building downtown, the kind with real wood paneling and the faint, reassuring smell of old paper. Levin was a man in his late 60s, with sharp eyes and no patience for small talk. He and Patrick had served on a local board together years ago. Maggie, he said, nodding as I sat down. He had already reviewed my brief, frantic email. Let's see what they've been doing. He didn't shuffle papers. He swiveled in his leather chair and typed into the electronic county database. His monitor was angled away from me, but I could hear the sharp, rhythmic clicks of the keyboard. All right, he said, his voice flat. Here's the quitclaim deed you mentioned. Pending. That's good. But they didn't start there. He clicked. Here it is. Filed 4 days before the deed. A durable power of attorney. It assigns all financial and real estate decisions for Margaret Doyle to Sabrina Doyle. My stomach clenched. It was worse than the deed. A POA would let her do anything. Empty my bank accounts, sell the house from under me, cash out my retirement funds. It's signed M. Doyle, Levin said, and it's notarized, stamped and sealed by a Ms. Lydia Hart. Lydia Hart, I said, tasting the name. The woman in the blazer. The deed was filed by Sabrina, acting as your power of attorney. Levin explained, his fingers flying again. That's why it was routed for verification. The signatures didn't match the master file, but the POA was her key to everything. On October 23rd, I said, my voice cold and hard. I have the check-in log from my appointment at Redwater Cardio. I was getting an EKG from 9:45 a.m. until well after 11. The notary stamp says 10:15 a.m. Levin nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. That's our anchor, Maggie, an ironclad alibi. He hit the print button, and his office printer began to hum. Here's what we do. Today, we file a formal affidavit, signed by you, stating that the POA is fraudulent, that you were not present, and that the signature is a forgery. We attach your alibi from the clinic. We will simultaneously file for an emergency temporary injunction, demanding the court freeze any and all actions taken under this fraudulent POA and block the recording of the deed. He pulled the warm papers from the printer and spread them on the desk. The forged signature was a poor imitation, too flowery. While he prepared the legal documents, I pulled out my phone. I still had the list I'd made. Number 1 notary. I looked up Notary Public Lydia Hart. A small office address popped up, not far from Levin's. I called the number. A polite voice answered. Hart Notary Services. How can I help you? Hello, I said, keeping my tone inquisitive, like any other customer. I'm inquiring about your services. Do you offer mobile notarizations where you come to a person's home? Oh, yes, the voice chirped. We do that all the time. We call it our in-home convenience service. Was this for yourself or a relative? A relative, I said. Thank you. I hung up. I looked at Levin. I'm going to see the notary. Right now. Maggie, let the police handle that. I just want to introduce myself, I said. Before she gets a call from you or the police and has time to think. Lydia Hart's office was a small, rented room above a sandwich shop. She was at her desk, the same woman from Mrs. Keating's description. Dark blazer, sharp features, currently looking bored as she scrolled through her phone. She looked up, annoyed, when I entered without an appointment. "Can I help you?" she asked. "My name is Margaret Doyle," I said. I pulled my Illinois driver's license from my wallet and placed it flat on her desk, right on top of her blotter. She looked at the license. She looked at my face. The blood drained from hers. She recognized the name, and she instantly knew the face on the license was not the face she had notarized. "I believe you met someone claiming to be me on October 23rd, I continued, my voice dangerously calm. "At 324 Elm Street, a convenience service." Lydia Hart began to stammer. I. It was a family matter. The daughter-in-law said her mother had just had a fall and couldn't get her ID, that it was an emergency. "Did you check her identification?" I asked. She stared at me, her professional veneer shattered. She said she'd forgotten her wallet in the ambulance. "So you violated the number one rule of your commission," I stated. "You notarized a document for a person whose identity you did not verify because you were told a story." She said nothing. She just stared at my license. "My lawyer is Arthur Levin at Levin and Rowe," I said, picking up my ID. "He will be contacting you. So will the Secretary of State. And the police." I walked out and drove back to Levin's office. The information was fuel. "She folded," I told him. "Admitted she didn't check ID." Levin was already on the phone. "That's right. Financial fraud. Forged power of attorney. Elder Crimes Unit. Yes. I'll hold." He looked at me and muted the call. "I'm getting you an appointment with Detective Rowan. He handles this. This isn't just a civil matter anymore. Maggie, this is a felony." While he spoke, I forwarded him the evidence. The time-stamped video file from my doorbell camera showing Sabrina letting Lydia Hart into my home. My Google Calendar entry for the doctor's appointment. The confirmation email from Redwater Cardio. The location data from my phone, proving I was 5 miles away. Levin unmuted the phone. "Yes, Detective. Tomorrow at 10, she will be there." It was Friday evening. I had just come from my senior yoga class, the gentle stretching and quiet breathing leaving me feeling grounded, settled in my own skin. The air was cool, carrying the first real bite of late autumn. I walked up the path to my own front door, the porch light I'd left on casting a warm, familiar glow. I slid my key into the deadbolt. It didn't go in. I stopped, frowning. I tried again, thinking I had the wrong angle. The key hit solid metal. It wouldn't even insert. I looked closely. The brass of my old lock, worn smooth over 30 years, was gone. In its place was a brand new, shiny chrome deadbolt. My heart didn't panic. It went cold and heavy. Taped to the center of the door, right at eye level, was a white envelope. My name was written on it in Sabrina's looping, ostentatious handwriting. I tore it open. The note inside was on heavy, cream-colored cardstock. "Maggie," it read, "for your safety and peace of mind, we've had the locks updated to a more secure system. Please just relax and let us manage things from here on out. We will let you know when it's a good time to visit." Visit. The kitchen light was on. I could see it through the curtains. I stepped back onto the grass, my yoga mat clutched in my hand, and looked up at the window. A shadow moved. Sabrina. Unmistakable. Then I saw a second silhouette, larger, standing still behind the curtain in the living room. "Evan?" He was in there, silent, while his wife locked me out of my own house. I did not knock. I did not yell. I pulled my cell phone from my coat pocket. My fingers were steady. I dialed 911. Redwater 911, what is your emergency? My name is Margaret Doyle, I said, my voice clear and even. I am at my residence, 324 Elm Street. I am the legal owner of this property. I have been locked out by my son and daughter-in-law, who are currently inside the house and refusing me entry. This is an illegal lockout. I gave the dispatcher the details. They said a patrol car was on its way. I waited on the sidewalk. 2, maybe 3 minutes later, a cruiser pulled up. 2 officers got out, a man and a woman. They looked tired. "Ma'am, Mrs. Doyle," the male officer asked. "That's correct," I said. "This is my home. My son and daughter-in-law have changed the locks without my consent and are inside." As if on cue, the front door opened. Sabrina stood there, framed in the doorway, bathed in the light from my hall. She had a look of profound, practiced sorrow on her face. Evan hovered behind her, refusing to meet my eyes. "Oh, thank goodness. Officers," Sabrina said, her voice dripping with relief. "You're here. My mother-in-law. She's been having a very difficult time. She's confused. We're so worried she's going to wander off." The officers looked from her to me. I could see the calculation in their eyes. The classic family dispute, confused elder scenario playing out. "Ma'am," the female officer said to me, her voice gentle, patronizing. "Can you tell us where you live?" "I live right here," I said. "At 324 Elm Street. I have lived here since 1992, and I am not confused. I am the sole owner." "She just doesn't understand," Sabrina cut in, her voice breaking. "We're trying to protect her. We have power of attorney. We're managing her assets for her own good." "That power of attorney is fraudulent," I said, my voice cutting through Sabrina's performance. "It is currently under investigation by Detective Rowan of the Financial Crimes Unit. Your management is attempted theft." The officers stiffened. That was a name they knew. "Do you have proof of ownership, Mrs. Doyle?" the male officer asked, his tone shifting. "I do." I unzipped my crossbody bag. Patrick had always insisted I carry it. "Never keep all your eggs in one basket, Maggie, but always know where the basket is." From an interior pocket, I pulled a plastic-sleeved, folded document. It was the original, embossed, gold-sealed deed to the house. I handed it to him. He unfolded it under the beam of his flashlight. He read the legal description. He read the name. Margaret A. Doyle and Patrick M. Doyle. He looked at my driver's license, which I offered next. He looked at Sabrina. "She is the owner of record. You cannot lock her out. You must let her in." Sabrina's face changed. The sweet, concerned mask melted, revealing something hard and furious underneath. "This is ridiculous. She's incompetent. We are taking care of her." "That is a civil matter, ma'am," the officer said, his voice now stern. "What you have done here is an illegal eviction. You will open the door and allow Mrs. Doyle access to her home, or you will be arrested for trespassing." Evan finally flinched. He stepped forward and muttered, "Sabrina, just open it." Sabrina threw him a look of pure venom, then stepped aside, her body rigid with rage. "The officers advised us to keep the peace. and said they would file a report documenting the civil dispute. I thanked them. They left. I stepped over my own threshold. The house smelled wrong, thick with Sabrina's perfume. And there, sitting on the mat by the stairs as if they owned the place, was a pair of bright red, 4-inch high-heeled shoes, a flag, planted. Sabrina and Evan were standing in my living room, watching me. I did not speak to them. I walked past them, into the kitchen, and picked up my phone. I dialed my locksmith. "Frank, it's Maggie Doyle. I have an emergency. Yes, tonight. I've had an illegal entry. I need every single lock on this house changed. Right now. I want a high-security system. A restricted keyway. Something no one can take a picture of and copy." I listened. "Yes, I'll pay the emergency fee. And Frank, I'll need exactly 2 keys. One for me, and one for my friend, Nora Hale." I looked up, meeting Sabrina's furious stare across the room. "No one else is ever to be given a key to this house again." I did not sleep. After the locksmith, Frank, had finished his work around 2 in the morning, I sat in Patrick's old armchair, the new, heavy key, cut from a blank that could not be copied at a hardware store, felt heavy and cold on the side table. The silence of the house was absolute. Evan and Sabrina had left in a screaming hurry, their car tearing down the quiet street, leaving only the smell of Sabrina's perfume and the violation. I watched the dark turn to a bruised, metallic grey. Just before 6 a.m. My phone vibrated. It was an email from Arthur Levin. The subject line was 3 words, T-Row granted. I opened it. An emergency judge, working early, had signed the temporary restraining order. It was effective immediately. It barred Sabrina Doyle and Evan Doyle from entering the property, contacting me in a harassing manner, and, most importantly, froze any and all transactions, recordings, or transfers related to the fraudulent power of attorney. The deed transfer was dead in the water. My breath left my body in a long, slow hiss. I had been holding it for days. I walked to my small desk, turned on the printer, and listened to the familiar whir and click as it pulled the paper through. It printed all 5 pages of the order. I found a clear plastic report sleeve. I slid the entire document inside. I went to the new, reinforced front door, opened it, and used heavy-duty packing tape to secure the order to the wood, right below the peephole. It was a declaration. I made coffee. I was halfway through my first cup, the sun just starting to cut across the kitchen floor, when the car door slammed. I looked through the sidelight window. Sabrina's white SUV was at the curb. She was already on the walkway, carrying a large cardboard box. Evan got out after her, holding another. He looked pale and hungover, but he was following her. She didn't knock. She strode up to the door and tried the handle. It was locked. She pounded on the wood with the side of her fist, a jarring, angry sound. I set my coffee mug down. I walked to the door and opened it, standing behind the heavy, locked storm door. "Maggie, this is absolutely ridiculous," she snapped, her voice sharp. "This behavior stops now. We are moving in to take care of you. As we agreed. You are clearly unwell. Open this door." She yanked on the storm door's handle. It held. "There is no agreement, Sabrina," I said. My voice was low, calm, and carried perfectly through the glass. She stared, genuinely baffled. "What are you talking about? We are your family. We have a family agreement. Now stop this nonsense and let us in." No. I will call the police and have you committed? She shrieked. I did not argue. I simply raised my hand and tapped my index finger against the clear plastic sleeve taped to the door, just inches from her face. Read this. Her eyes focused on the paper. I watched the blood drain from her face, then rush back in a hot, blotchy tide. She saw the seal of the state court. She saw her name. She saw the words, restraining order. You can't do this, she screamed, her voice cracking. This is my house, Evan. Tell her this is our house. Evan, who was still standing on the bottom step holding his box, just stared at the concrete. I pointed up, to the small, dark dome of the new doorbell camera Frank had installed. This is recording everything. Sabrina, audio and video. The police will find it very interesting. She recoiled, stepping back as if the camera had bitten her. Now, I said, I believe you left some of your property here last night. I closed the main door, leaving the storm door locked. I walked to the entryway. Her red, high-heeled shoes were still there, an insult on my floor mat. I picked them up. I went into the living room and collected the expensive leather handbag she had tossed on the sofa. I went to the kitchen and gathered the stack of glass food containers she had brought, the ones she never bothered to take home. I returned to the door. I opened it. Sabrina was standing on the porch, vibrating with a rage so pure it was almost silent. Evan hadn't moved. You are a non-resident, I said, my voice flat. And these are your belongings. I stepped past her, onto the porch, and walked down the steps. I walked onto the damp, cool morning grass of my front lawn. Carefully. I set the red heels down, side by side, as if for inspection. I placed the handbag next to them. I went back, retrieved the glass containers, and set them down in a neat, orderly row. I did not throw them. I did not break them. I simply placed them. I looked up. Across the street. Mrs. Keating was watching from her window, 2 houses down. Mr. Henderson was on his porch with his phone, openly recording. Sabrina looked at her expensive, curated life sitting on the wet grass. She looked at the neighbors. She looked at Evan. You old bitch, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. I have called a car service to pick you up, I said, ignoring her. It should be here in 5 minutes. You are trespassing. We are family. Mum, Evan finally shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. You can't do this to us. I stopped on the top step. I turned and looked directly at my son. You let her sign my name. You let her try to steal my home. This house was built on 30 years of work and respect, I said, my voice cutting through the morning air. This house has no more room for contempt. I went inside and closed the solid wood door. I heard her scream, a raw sound of thwarted greed. I will be back with my lawyer, she shrieked from the lawn. We will sue you for this. We will take this house. I locked the deadbolt. I walked to the hall table, picked up my own phone, held it up to the glass of the sidelight window so she could see it, and spoke clearly, though only I could hear. So will I. Detective Rowan was a man who understood paper. His office was small, grey, and efficient, much like the man himself. I sat across from him on Monday, the day after the incident on the lawn, the air still tasting of justice and frost. I handed him the plastic sleeve containing Sabrina's handwritten note, the one she'd taped to my door. This is clean. Mrs. Doyle, he said, bagging it as evidence. A handwritten admission? We've had the locks updated. Let us manage things. She couldn't help herself. It establishes her intent perfectly. I also gave him the USB drive with the doorbell camera footage. He watched the clip of the police encounter, where Sabrina, smooth as silk, claimed to have power of attorney to manage my assets. He nodded. That's the ballgame, he said. Using a fraudulent document to direct law enforcement. He had already been busy. The change of address you told me about, he continued, tapping a file on his desk. The address they used? It's not an apartment. It's a commercial mail drop. Suite 204 at a postal annex. We subpoenaed the rental agreement. It was leased 2 months ago by a shell company. He slid the paper toward me. Kerr and Vale Property Group. Kerr, I said. Sabrina's maiden name. Exactly. We got a warrant for the box. We found 2 things of interest. First, a stack of overdue credit card statements for your son, Evan. He's in debt. Maggie. About $50,000 worth. Second, statements from a cryptocurrency exchange. Looks like he tried to play the market and lost his shirt. His portfolio is down 90%. The picture clarified, cold and sharp. Evan wasn't just weak, he was desperate. But Sabrina, Rowan said. She's the architect. We got warrants for their email and cloud accounts. She was already shopping for a loan. He turned his monitor and showed me an email chain. It was between Sabrina and a mortgage broker. We are looking to secure a significant cash-out refinance on the Redwater property as soon as the title is clear. She had written, just 2 weeks ago. We need to activate the passive assets in the family portfolio to fund our new venture. My house, my paid-off, 30-year home, reduced to a passive asset. She was planning to gut my equity, pay off Evan's gambling debts, and use the rest to start her Kerr and Vale business. While Rowan dug into the criminal case, Levin was stamping out the fires on the civil side. The notary, Lydia Hart, had been formally interviewed by an investigator from the Secretary of State's office, prompted by my complaint. Faced with my alibi from the Hart Clinic, she had folded completely. Her official statement was a mess of excuses. She claimed she had trusted the assurances of the daughter-in-law that it was a family emergency. She admitted she had bypassed formal ID verification to avoid stressing an elderly client. She had violated the single most important rule of her commission. Armed with that confession, Levin moved. The Redwater County Recorder's Office officially suspended the fraudulent deed filing, marking it as filed in error, subject to criminal investigation. My bank, which I had visited personally, placed a permanent fraud alert on the original POA, ensuring it could never be used again. The paper trail was dead. I thought, foolishly, that this would be the end of it, that Sabrina would retreat. Instead, my phone rang. The caller ID was unknown. Margaret Doyle. The voice was smooth, deep, and sounded expensive. My name is Miles Trent. I've been retained by your family as a neutral, third-party mediator. I don't have a mediator, Mr. Trent. I have a lawyer. That's exactly the kind of adversarial thinking I'm here to help avoid, he said, his tone oozing reason. Sabrina and Evan are heartbroken by this misunderstanding. They feel this has been terribly escalated. They are willing to overlook the unfortunate incident on the lawn if you are willing to sit down, just family, and discuss a mutually agreeable path forward. A path forward to what? They are still, at the end of the day, worried about your welfare. Perhaps you could retain the title, but grants Sabrina administrative rights to manage the property's upkeep for your own protection. Of course. Administrative rights. It was the same theft, just wearing a suit. Mr. Trent, I said, my voice like ice. I will not be having any meetings that do not include my lawyer, Arthur Levin, and Detective Rowan. Any further attempts by you, or anyone else, to contact me directly will be considered harassment and a violation of my restraining order. Goodbye. I hung up and immediately called Levin. He laughed, a dry, barking sound. He's not a mediator, Maggie. He's a fixer. They're trying to scare you into a private settlement before the criminal charges stick. This is good. It means they're terrified. Rowan called me back that afternoon. His voice was final. We've presented the case to the district attorney's office. They're moving forward. With what? The full list, he said. Forgery. For the POA. Filing a false instrument. For the deed. Conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud. Based on those emails. And because you are over 60, we are adding the felony charge of financial elder abuse. They tried to steal your house. Mrs. Doyle. We're going to make sure they don't get the chance to try again. The house felt vast and empty after the confrontation. The silence was heavy, still ringing with Sabrina's threats. I couldn't stay in it alone. I called Nora Hale, my friend for 40 years. I didn't even have to ask. I'm on my way, she said, her voice a solid, practical comfort. And I'm bringing my slippers. Nora moved into the guest room that night. Her presence didn't just fill the silence, it chased out the last of Sabrina's toxic perfume. The house felt like mine again, like a fortress with an ally on the wall. We didn't just sit and mourn. We got to work. Nora, who is more practical than I am, pointed to my neat stacks of paper, the police report, the TRO, my EKG results. This is good, Maggie, she said, but it's vulnerable. It's paper. We need it to be iron. The next day, 2 women from our St. Bridget's Church Club came over. They weren't bringing a casserole. They brought a high-speed document scanner and a black, encrypted external hard drive. For 3 hours, my kitchen table was transformed. We scanned every single document, the deed, the fraudulent POA, Levin's affidavit, the notary's business license, my alibis, the police report. We created a digital, unchangeable archive of the entire fraud, backed up in a way Sabrina couldn't touch. The fortifications continued. I went to my bank and sat down with the branch manager. I am the subject of a financial elder abuse investigation, I said, using the words Detective Rowan had used. I need this branch to become a vault. She understood immediately. We put flags on everything. My accounts were converted to in-person only status. No wire transfers, no phone requests, no password resets. Every single digital or spousal authorization Evan might have had, even from years ago, was located and purged. Nothing moved without my face being in front of her. When I got home, I called Frank, the locksmith, again. I need more, I told him. He installed a new system. Discrete cameras inside the house, covering the front and back doors. A new keypad for the garage, the code known only to me and Nora. I even called the local police precinct, the non-emergency number, and formally notified the watch commander that there was an active criminal investigation and a restraining order on my property. Any call from my son or daughter-in-law regarding me, I explained, was to be treated as a potential violation. My lawyer, Arthur Levin, was building a legal wall to match. He drew up a formal revocation of any prior powers. It was a simple, powerful document that explicitly cancelled any power of attorney I might have ever signed, known or unknown. We filed it immediately and paid to have it publicly recorded with the county. It was a flare, visible to any bank or title company, that I, Margaret Doyle, was the only one in charge of my name. That evening, as Nora and I were putting away the scanner, she suddenly went still. "Maggie," she said, her eyes distant. "I just remembered something. From that awful dinner, the one where she was ordering curtains. I waited. I went to the hall closet to get an aspirin." Nora said, "Sabrina was in the hall by the garage door. She had her phone out. I thought she was just checking her email, but she was pointed at the wall. She was taking a picture of Patrick's old key cabinet, the one where you keep the spare for the shed and the mailbox key." I felt my blood run cold. It wasn't just my house key she had photographed. She had been inventorying every point of access. We added Nora's memory to a new affidavit. The next day, Mrs. Keating called. "Helen?" I said. "It's Maggie." "I know. Dear," she said, her voice firm. "Your lawyer called me." "Yes. I will sign the statement. I saw her. The woman in the dark blazer. I'll say it in court if I have to. You don't let people steal a home." Levin was preparing one final defense. "They are cornered. Maggie. But snakes are dangerous then," he said over the phone. "I'm preemptively filing a quiet title action. It's a lawsuit that asks the judge to declare, once and for all, that your title is clear and that no other claim, especially theirs, is valid. It will be the final nail in the coffin of that fraudulent deed." I hung up. I looked at my wall of files. I looked at Nora. I felt the house settle around me, solid and safe. I was no longer rehearsing arguments. I was practicing my testimony, short, factual, and backed by proof. I had a new motto, one I said to myself over and over: talk less, show the paper. The night before the hearing, the house was braced. The rain started around 9, a soft, tapping whisper against the glass that grew into a steady, isolating drum. I was in the living room, the glow of my laptop screen the only light. 2 messages were waiting. The first was an email. It wasn't from Sabrina, but from a high-end law firm downtown. The subject line read, "Confidential Settlement Proposal Doyle Family Matter." I read it twice. It was a masterwork of veiled threats. It spoke of the public airing of family grievances and the lasting reputational damage my escalation was causing. It mentioned defamation of character. The offer was simple if I dropped the restraining order and all complaints against the notary, and agreed to a joint oversight agreement for the property. Sabrina and Evan would graciously agree not to file a countersuit for slander. I closed the laptop. It was Sabrina's voice, just dressed in a $300 an hour suit. A moment later, my phone buzzed on the table. A text message. It was from Evan. "Mum, this has all gone insane. I'm just worried about you. I only ever wanted you to be safe." The words were smooth, hollow. They sounded like a script, like something a publicist would write after a scandal. Safe. He didn't mean safe. He meant compliant. He meant erased. I did not reply to either of them. I went to the kitchen and filled the kettle, the click of the gas burner igniting sounding unnaturally loud. I made peppermint tea, letting the sharp, clean steam rise into my face. I sat at the kitchen table, the one Patrick and I had sanded down ourselves. I pulled his old workshop notebook from the shelf. It was bound in soft, cracked leather, the pages yellowed. On the inside cover, in his strong, clear pencil script, were the words he'd told me when we signed the mortgage. Keep the house, keep the name. I ran my thumb over the indentations of the graphite. I remembered him teaching me to fix a loose board on the porch. So many summers ago, I'd bent a nail and tried to hammer it flat instead of pulling it out. He'd stopped my hand gently. No, Maggie, he'd said. You have to drive the nail straight from the first hit. If it goes in crooked, it doesn't matter how hard you hit it after. The join will always be weak. Their entire plan was a crooked nail, the forgery, the lies. It was built weak, and I just had to pull it out, as if summoned by the thought. My phone rang. A restricted number. I picked it up. Mrs. Doyle. Detective Rowan's voice was tired but firm. I apologize for the late hour. I wanted you to know before you went into court tomorrow. The Secretary of State's office just issued their emergency finding based on our report. Lydia Hart's notary commission has been officially and temporarily suspended, pending the criminal outcome. Thank you, Detective, I said. The words came out steady. That is good news. It's a start, he said. Good luck tomorrow. I hung up. I went to my closet and laid out my clothes. A simple, dark blue dress. The one I used to wear for important meetings at Maple and Hallow. Sensible, low-heeled shoes. My pearls. I would not look emotional. I would not look frail. I would look like a manager, which I was. On my desk, I checked the evidence binder Arthur had prepared. 3 copies, neatly bound, each document in a clear plastic sleeve, tabbed by exhibit number, the fraudulent POA, the EKG printout from Redwater Cardio, showing my location and the vital signs of a woman who was very much alive. The doorbell camera footage on a USB drive, the emails from Sabrina to the mortgage broker, discussing activating my passive asset. I opened my own legal pad. My testimony was not a speech. It was a list. Bullet points. Events. Dates. Times. I would not use the word betrayed. I would not use the word heartbroken. I would present the facts. I would let the paper talk. Nora, who had been reading in the armchair, put her book down. She had been a silent, solid presence all evening. She walked over to the desk and slid a small, folded index card toward me. I opened it. Her handwriting was a familiar, comforting script. It said, "This door knows its owner." A small, hard smile found my face. I folded the card carefully and slipped it deep into the pocket of the blue dress. I turned off the lights. The house went dark, but the sound of the rain filled the space. It beat a steady, heavy rhythm on the tin roof of the kitchen addition. Patrick had loved that sound. Tonight, it didn't sound angry or sad. It sounded like a heartbeat, steady, patient, and waiting for morning. The Redwater County Civil Courtroom was plain, with beige walls and fluorescent lighting. We were there for the hearing on the fraudulent transfer and the permanent injunction. Sabrina's lawyer, the one from the email, argued first. He was smooth. He spoke of well-meaning family intervention and concerns over cognitive decline. He painted me as a confused, vulnerable woman they were only trying to help. It was an act of love, Your Honor. He finished, his voice full of false sympathy. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Prentice, looked over her glasses. An act of love, Did this act of love include an informed consent document, signed and verified with a valid state ID, as required by law for a power of attorney? Sabrina's lawyer began to shuffle his papers. Well, Your Honor, in these sensitive family matters, the formalities were— That's a no, then, she said, cutting him off. When Detective Rowan was called, he was brief. He presented the time-stamped doorbell video, and the court watched Sabrina lie to the police about her authority. He presented the handwritten note, "Let us manage things." Lydia Hart, the notary, was next. She looked small and terrified. Arthur Levin's questions were like a surgeon's scalpel. Did you, or did you not, verify the identity of the signer? Margaret Doyle. By checking a government-issued ID, Hart whispered. No. I was told it was an emergency. I did not. A clerk from the county recorder's office testified that all filings related to the fraudulent POA were officially nullified and marked as fraudulent, subject to criminal investigation. The judge didn't need a recess. She looked at Sabrina and Evan. The evidence is absolute. The claim of elder care is a transparent, offensive pretext for what is clearly financial fraud. Sabrina stood up, her face crimson. You can't— Sit down, Ms. Doyle, the judge snapped. The order was signed. A permanent injunction, restoring my full, unassailable ownership. An order barring Sabrina and Evan Doyle from the property at 324 Elm Street, and from contacting me. And, to my grim satisfaction, an order that they were responsible for all my legal fees. Sabrina made a low, choked sound of pure rage. Evan was chalk-white, staring at the wall. Their legal avenue had just collapsed. As we were dismissed, Sabrina looked directly at me, her eyes promising a war. I did not engage. I looked at the judge, at the American flag behind her, and I spoke my only words of the day, my voice clear in the quiet room. My name is on the door, and it will stay there. I walked out of the courtroom, down the dark hallway, and pushed open the heavy main doors of the building. The afternoon sun hit me so hard I had to lift a hand. It was bright, sharp, and clean. Nora was waiting for me on the steps, and across the street, a small moving truck was parked. She saw me, and she smiled. They came back just before sunset. I saw their car pull up from the living room window. They got out, as if to make one last, desperate appeal, or perhaps to retrieve the boxes they had tried to move in with. They stopped dead on the sidewalk. I had been busy. The front lawn was immaculate. On the curb, I had placed the items from that morning. The 2 cardboard boxes, the red high-heeled shoes, the expensive handbag, the glass containers, and, taped to the very top box in a clear plastic sleeve, a certified copy of the 5-page court order. My new security camera was recording the scene in high definition. Across the street, Mrs. Keating's porch light flicked on, illuminating them perfectly. Sabrina stared at her belongings, left on the grass like an offering to nobody. I turned from the window. I walked to my front door. I engaged the new, heavy-duty deadbolt. The click of the metal sliding home was a very small sound, but it was final. It was the sound of the root being cut. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it a big boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear it.